So thank you very much, Esprinia, for the invitation. And also thank you very much, True Digital Park, for putting out this event together with Esprinia. So today I'm going to talk about common market entry strategy and opportunity. By looking at the attendee list, it seems like, we have friends coming from different parts of Southeast Asia. We have friends from, Thailand. We have friends from Malaysia. We have friends from, Vietnam, or of course, quite a number of them from Singapore. Okay, so before I begin, let me give an introduction about myself for people who do not know who am I. Okay, so I'm actually the managing partner of Blackstone Consulting, which is a business consultancy firm that helps to scale businesses in Southeast Asia. Okay, so myself, as you can see, I'm actually in my late 20s. Okay, so let me go through what actually have I done previously and why am I here today. Yeah. So it actually started, let's not talk about high school. I actually started studying human resource management in Singapore Poly. So that's how I started in the business world. So that was in the business school. So after that, I actually interned and worked in the MNC for quite a while before my university. So basically handling a lot of human resource related stuff. That's where I decided, okay, maybe it's time for me to go into something more generic. I want to dabble into a little bit more, not just too specialized into one area. I want to learn more about how do I run a business. So that's where I decided to go into NUS and study business administration. Okay, so with that, it gave me a lot of exposure. So I actually got to know quite a lot of things about business, things like that. But all along, since even before Polytechnic, I actually decided that maybe actually what I ultimately want to do is to run my own business and able to actually tap into different element of the business instead of just one element. Okay, so that's where I actually decided to let me join a consultancy firm, find out how businesses are being run. Okay, eventually, if I'm going to launch my own business, definitely I need to learn what are the few things that I should actually avoid in order to run a successful business, because if not, running a business will be very expensive. So go into consultancy firm, get to know, different kind of businesses, how it has been run. It got very interesting because in different kind of business, right, you can actually see different, problem and challenges. Okay, but there are always common denominator that actually help a company to succeed to another level. Same for going, attend entry into a new country. There are always some sort of formula that you can actually work on it. But how do you actually get your company to the next market, a new market successfully, will still fall back to how do you execute it? Okay. So yeah, so to continue my story, I actually became a mom after I graduated. And then that's where, from the consultancy firm, we spun off a new company called Blackstone Consulting. And here we are running Blackstone Consulting for close to a couple of years, 3 years for now, helping a lot of companies growing from, companies from we have office in Taiwan, Thailand, Malaysia, Hong Kong, where companies are going cross-border here and there. So we help companies to sort of enter Southeast Asia through Singapore, and then grow exponentially in Thailand, in Malaysia, in Malaysia, Vietnam, or sometimes Indonesia. Okay, so with that, all along I know that I actually value how a person being dressed. Okay, why is that so? Because I mean, in the business school, we know that everybody are quite competitive. In the business school, no matter what you see, a lot of people, people are pretty competitive in general. But in order to get yourself known in the market, there are a few ways to do that. You see, people don't just recognize you by who you are, if you are, just starting out. So I actually decided that, dressing differently actually helps a person to actually, let people remember you and then help you to venture into, entrepreneurship. So that's where I actually, late last year, actually launched a fashion brand, Shine Apart, that sells colorful clothes, more brighter, jackets, things like that, to help entrepreneurs out there to get to, get people to know them, get people to remember them. Okay, so only recently we actually had this joint venture in Singapore, where we partner with the Malaysia partner to actually do talent as a service. Means we provide like tech talent to like Singapore companies, to companies who actually needed like tech support. So which is we find it very important in this business. Okay, so I actually mentor quite a few programs, startup in a few programs. IAPS, which is a very good partner of us. Basically, it's a university affiliated accelerator. High speed sport accelerator. NYP is a school in Singapore. Techstar would be the international accelerator that probably you guys know. Okay, so this is about me. Feel free to connect with me. Happy to connect and talk further. Okay, so now I'm going to go into the main topic that we are talking about today. So this is just an introduction about ourselves, Platform Consulting. What do we do? And you can find out more in our website. Okay, so before I talk about what are the common market entry strategy, let's talk about what are the business opportunity nowadays in Southeast Asia. I'm going to like in-depth a huge list of like market research, but these are a few key pointers that you should look out for. Okay, especially in the coming year in Southeast Asia. Okay, so in the past 2 years is pretty interesting. Yeah, in the past 2 years, all of us, we are sort of stuck in our own country. We can't really fly. But in next year, or even like starting now, people are already starting to fly. Okay, so that's where a lot of companies, a lot of entrepreneurs are probably looking into opportunity outside of their home country. Okay, so number one, increasing middle class. Okay, so by 2030, 70% of the ASEAN population will be middle class. Okay, so what's the implication of this particular trend itself? Okay, it also means that in the past, maybe being price competitive can be very helpful in the past. Okay, nowadays with so many cross-border transport, cross-border selling, or even with the increase of middle class population, it means that people don't just value price. Okay, so this is very important for businesses, especially people who are in Southeast Asia. Being cheap may not be the value proposition anymore for some of the businesses. So you may want to consider how can you create value out of just being very price competitive, to actually target the middle class here in ASEAN. So definitely there are a lot of opportunity, as we can see that like even in Singapore, let's say Singapore, if you actually sell a product that is super cheap, say if it's like a bottle, okay, a bottle that is very cheap. Imagine if you are a parent, okay, I myself is actually a mom, so you may not want to buy the cheapest one for your kid. Okay, the reason why is because you may be afraid that okay, this is not BPA free, or maybe this is made of certain materials, things like that, or even this kind of item you may not even want to buy from overseas or buy online. Yeah, so these are the few key things that you may want to take note for, especially with this trend that is growing. How can you communicate your message clearer to others that this is not just a cheaper product, it's value of money, and why is it value of money, and what are a few certification or even things that actually help you to prove that this is a good product. Okay, so point number 2, increasing adoption of digital services. Yes, there are more and more people using mobile phone or even laptop, things like that, digital product. Of course, also pandemic also is the one that actually accelerated this whole trend. As you can see, more and more are more reliant on your laptop, stuff like this. But also one thing that we have to be clear is in Southeast Asia, there are actually few different tier. Okay, in certain country, due to the past historical trend, right, they sort of has skipped the laptop or computer screen era or trend. Okay, in a way that they move straight to mobile phone. So if you are a product that is actually targeting user, okay, you may want to take that into account. So that will determine like, should you actually focus your resources on developing a mobile app, or should you focus it on having it on screen? Okay, so this is important because let's say if you are targeting a country whereby most people are actually using phone, and you only have a website that is not so flexible and dynamic to the phone field. Okay, so you may want to relook into it because that might be a reason why your business is not going well over there. Okay, so a few countries like Thailand, Indonesia, they did skip a step. Okay, and a lot of people are actually using phone rather than using the laptop or computer. Okay, so take that into account. Number 3, okay, why is this an opportunity? Because we have diverse set of capability. With this diverse set in different country, they are focusing more on different things. It actually make it easier for you to play around with the currency, play around with the resources. Okay, say if you are a business, you may not be based in Singapore, or you are trying to expand, enter Southeast Asia through Singapore. Okay, say Taiwan company, I want to expand and grow in Southeast Asia. So you can actually set up a company in Singapore just to fundraise, or maybe get yourself protected because of your IP, stuff like that, because IP law is actually better over here. Okay, so you can actually license your technology to a neighboring country. Because why neighboring country is because Singapore is still a small population. Okay, so there's that much that you can sell. You can sell higher price, but there's still that much that you can sell. So yeah, so that's a common strategy would be, land in Singapore, raise money, sell to markets in like Indonesia, Malaysia, or Vietnam through Singapore. Okay, or sometimes CLMV, you can actually go through Thailand. Okay, Thailand, because the infrastructure that was being set between Thailand versus with CLMV, Cambodia, Laos, Myanmar, and Vietnam, the infrastructure between them will be better. So some companies actually, enter CLMV via Thailand. Okay, so this actually gives us a very good opportunity to play around with resources. Yeah. Okay, the next one, intra ASEAN benefits. Okay, so why intra ASEAN benefits? We are part of the ASEAN, association. So with that, there are actually a lot of trade agreement that have been set up. So if you are actually a product company that do a lot of logistics, you may want to take that into account. Okay, I won't cover too much for that, but this is something that you can actually research more. Yeah. Okay, let's talk about the common strategies and opportunity. Okay, so as you can see, these are the few common ways of doing it. I'll highlight more what is the more common way that that businesses usually do at your stage of business. Okay, so say if you are a startup, yeah, for a startup, usually for startup, they will start looking for like distributor. Okay, talking to few people overseas through accelerator program or through partners, talk to some distributor to see whether anyone actually would like to carry their product. But one of the biggest mistake that a lot of startup actually make is, they are just expecting, I have the product, you as a local distributor, can you take a product and just sell? Okay, but many times they actually forgot that you actually need to set up, some operational support. Because let's say if you are dealing with a bigger company and you are serving it as a smaller company, it's very common for a big company, say if it's a manufacturer, we actually needed certain support, certain service level agreement that you need to achieve, in order to do that. So sometimes having a distributor and that's all, the kind of investment that you actually put in, it may not be enough. Okay, so this is a most common mistake that I actually see a lot of startup made, where they actually expect, the local partner just do everything with it, and then not setting up their own team to actually support it. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, so some of the few ways JV, yes, you can actually partner with partner over there, local partner, form a new company, and then put everything, all the transaction, and put it in. Okay. So yeah. Yeah, the least common one would be franchising M&A, because that will probably not be the first step that you do. Let's say if you are the startup, assuming everyone here is more towards the startup space, opening a branch, most of the time, why this is the least common is because there are some restrictions out there in terms of setting up company. So say if you want to set up a company in Thailand, you need a 51% holding by a local partner. Okay, so that is actually a barrier that most companies face to actually open their own branch over there. But if not, there are always other schemes like BOI, Board of Investment, where you can actually set out full 100%, but you actually take longer. Okay, so I won't go through too in depth, but I'm going to talk about a framework that most of the time we actually use when we actually consult our client. Okay, so as you can see, we have two main rows over here. Okay, in color: start, scale, and sell. Okay, so basically this framework can also apply to when you are starting a business, where we actually apply it now to when you are doing a market entry. Okay, so under start, you have development phase. So that's where you have the initial idea of launching in a new market. Okay, so for this period of time, you are probably at the initial stage. You are just thinking, how should you actually enter this market? Yeah, so later I'll go through a list of questions that you can ask yourself to help yourself prepare for a new market entry. Yeah. So startup. So you actually started in a new market, but you are just making some adjustment. That's where your first paying client will be coming in. Okay. Scale, that's where you are growing very fast. You are at the growing stage or you are at expansion stage. Okay. Then lastly, sell, maturity stage. Okay. So depending on which stage you are, you can actually use this question to think it through when you are trying to enter a new market. Okay. So we actually segregated into people, product, and process for the list of questions that you can go through. Yep. So I'll pause a while. Okay. So development. Okay, say you are actually at the initial stage. You just have an initial idea of launching a new market. Okay, I'm a Singapore company. I decided to launch in Thailand. Okay, so these are a few questions that you may want to think of. Firstly, definitely you need to know who are your ideal client. Whoever that you are selling to right now, it can actually give you some, sort of the guideline and direction that, who will you be serving. But ultimately in the new market, the ideal client may not be the ideal client that you are serving in the current market that you have. Okay, like for example, purchasing power is something that you may need to think of. Okay, how much that you should price, and for your current product, sometimes for a certain hardware product, there's as much margin that you can actually play around. Okay, so say, let's say one of the company that we are dealing with is actually a device that is like a home care device. It costs like $1,000 in the normal retail market. But in order to move into a new market whereby actually $1,000 can also be $1,000 can also be a salary of a person, then you may not want to target the mass market, and you needed to target a higher income market or change your business model. Okay, so these are the few key points you need to understand who is actually your ideal client in your current market versus the new market that you are talking about. Okay, so with that idea, think about who are the potential partners. These potential partners, they may be just an initial idea. Okay, you can talk to a few people just to get a sense of like, who can you partner with. Doesn't mean that you actually have to finalize it at this early stage. Okay, so sometimes, most of the time, it will be easier. Let's say if you know that you actually have a network of people to actually tap onto to help you to, penetrate the market. Okay, competitors are important because if you are going to a product that is like, already a red ocean, and for your current product to actually strive good, you needed it to be a blue ocean, then you may want to rethink, is this the market that you are looking for? So it's very important, not to skip this step of understanding who are actually providing such solution or can be substitute of this solution at this stage. Yeah. Okay, so product. We are still at the development column. What are similarities between the original versus your ideal product? Okay, it's not always the case that when you go into a new market, you need to have a 360 degree change or even a major change to your product. Sometimes it's good that you can always launch your current product, test out the market, get some feedback, from partners will be good. Get some feedback from a few, friends that you have in that new market. Find out whether this is something that is receptive. Okay. One thing that you may want to avoid, which is commonly made, would be making sure that your product is super ready, then you launch in that new market. Because sometimes when your product is super ready, it means that you actually already put in a lot of resources to make sure the product is super ready. And then when you go into the new market, you realize that, okay, actually, no, that is not what the market wanted. And you couldn't create a market out of it for your current product. So you may want to relook into this. Don't do it at the late stage. Do it at the early stage. Test it out first and then just launch it. Yeah. Okay, so lastly, process. What kind of budget do you have for this expansion? I think that is something that we have to be realistic, especially if you are a startup. Even if you're not a startup, if you're an SME, a budget also have to come in place. Okay, that will determine what kind of approach that you do when you expand in the new market. So for example, you go back to the first stage where we talk about, the few ways of like launching in the new market. Say you only have limited budget. Okay, you have limited budget and you may not want to sort of open a company and sustain the company. Okay, so in that case, most of the time you will probably want to find a partner or the distributor, give them a higher margin, and get their help to actually test out a market and then launch it over there. There can be certain deals like, say, you can be a distributor for me at the early stage or an agent for me at the early stage. We will give you the margin. We'll do profit sharing, a good one. But once we actually manage to capture the market well, let's do a joint venture together. Okay, so this can be one of the approach that you may want to do, and is common during this pandemic period where a lot of people could not fly and couldn't meet up to actually kneel down into an official joint venture. Okay, but there are many factors that come in play. Say if you have extra money that is flowing in and out of your business, sometimes having an extra entity may be helpful to actually protect everyone from any losses or any fraud, things like that. Okay, so yeah, so feel free to ask any question in the chat box. I can actually address that later. Let's talk about startup stage. Okay, so at the startup stage, you are actually having your first client, okay, but you are still making some adjustment. That's where you probably just launch in the market. No longer it's just an idea. So who will be your first paying client? Yeah, so that it will be very important. But also remember that your first paying client may not be the actual target that you want to focus on. Okay, someone may actually pay for your item, but if that is not the market that actually gives you enough margin to play around, or that is not your plan at all, then you may want to relook into your strategy. Is probably because your marketing strategy actually cause you to actually serve that particular first paying client. Really look into it. See whether is this something that you actually needed, or is this actually an opportunity that all along you didn't thought of it, but that should be the market that you are looking in. Okay. Yeah. So what we will always advise is do some research. If you have a little bit budget, just you can always hire someone locally or someone who is working in that area, to do some common research, a high level one, and then zoom down on your own before you actually make the commitment. Okay, there are a lot of like sort of like grants from the government, whichever country you are at. Most of the time there will be grants that help you to do so. Yeah. Okay, so who are the potential investor and financer? Take note that it's not always the case whereby you need to fundraise before you enter that new market, and it's also not the case whereby you need to create some activities or create some result before you can fundraise in that new market. Okay, so which is go back to the question that the first part that I talked about is you can always open an entity here in Singapore, and then when you are fundraising, you can let people know that you are actually going for a regional play. So the potential investor may be coming earlier, but you can always do the way, a startup way to increase the value of your headquarter. Say your headquarter is Singapore, you are actually wanting to go into a new market. So for the new market, you actually do a fundraising in that new market itself. And with the amount to be raised, that will actually increase the value in the new market, and then it will increase the value in your headquarter. Okay, so there can be some share swapping that you can actually do to incentivize a local partner, some benefits if they actually do very well over there, and actually benefits from the HQ side. Okay, so that's where the strategy and structure will come in. Yeah. So in terms of product, is your MVP working? Okay, so this is a stage whereby you definitely will have your product, whether is it working, whether your business model is working, you need to realize at this stage. Okay, though you can actually start selling to other people. Okay. Yeah, so for process, marketing will be very important. How can you go viral? Okay, those in bold will be important that in our point of view that we always see. And what kind of like service delivery process can you do? Okay, you can tap on your local partners or set up your own team and run it from there. If you're an e-commerce company, you can even test out without setting a company over there or flying there. Just throw some ads through social media, test the market and get some response. Yeah. Okay, scaling, growth, expansion. Okay, so this is where you're actually scaling very fast. Okay, yeah. So the first question that you're actually at when you are at the growing stage, right? Because this is a period of time that you probably are growing a few different markets. It may not be just one market. Okay, so one key question that you may want to ask yourself is, can you actually get your local team and then run it on its own? Okay, why is it important is, I mean, locally, definitely there are a lot of different culture that actually, especially in Southeast Asia, that actually affect how the operation is being run. Okay, it takes time to set up. Okay, but definitely in the HQ point of view, you may want to actually transfer certain experience or knowledge that you had in your home country to the local team. That would definitely help in some way because whoever is running on the ground may not be in that particular space. They may be able to help you to set up everything over there, but they may not have the kind of like experience from running your particular business. Okay, so the communication between HQ and the local market will be very important. Okay, and this is a stage whereby you need to consider, can you get more local support and then get your HQ to support other things instead or running other expansion. Yeah. Okay, so for product wise, how can you improve your profit margin? Okay, yeah, that's where your product will have to come in to see whether there's any hindrance in adoption of your product, any way that you can actually improve this. Yeah. Process, what are the things that you can actually outsource? This is very important because a lot of times when you're a startup, you will try to do everything yourself. Okay, especially at the early stage. Nothing wrong about that. Okay, most people will do that. But when you reach a stage whereby you're actually growing very fast, sometimes outsourcing it will be very efficient and helpful. Okay, I mean, the point of view of a bigger company, MSC, usually most of the activities will be outsourced. Okay, but for startup, you probably won't reach that stage, to outsource almost everything of your business. But you may want to start looking into, getting some support externally. Okay. Yeah, and this is a good stage to do that because that's where you are actually growing your income consistently and you have the extra budget to do that. Okay, next one, expansion. You are actually trying to increase your market share. Okay, so some question you might want to ask, at the people stage whereby, can you actually sell the current product to a new market within that country itself? Okay, number one. Or can you sell more things to your current customer? Okay, it can be other product. Can you sell more things to your current customer? These are the two main common ways that you can actually expand your market over there to get more market share. Yeah, so you may want to think about it. You do not need to think about it at this stage. At the initial stage, you can have some idea, but sometimes don't plan too much for this because the market trend will change. Yeah, most of the time, whatever you plan out may not happen when you're actually at the expansion stage. Okay, so yeah, so think about it. Who else can you actually partner with to actually grow further? Okay, so yeah, so this is a stage you can actually spend more money on your marketing dollar, spend more money on the expansion, because you should be autopiloting quite a lot of things at this stage. Yeah. So what other product can be introduced in the new market? Yeah, can you actually have economies of scale? Take the benefits of economies of scale. Okay, as you can see, the stage where you are at the growth, go to the expansion. It's about making it more efficient. It's no longer just about getting more clients. It's also making more efficient, passing the saving to your client. Okay, so lastly, the process. Any processes can is actually running at the maximum capacity. Okay, so same thing as the first one, outsource. Outsource certain function. Make sure everything is efficient. Your SOP should be very good at this stage, and so it's all about efficiency and profitability, the margin play. Okay, so this is more about scaling when you are growing very fast. Okay, finally, at selling. Okay, selling is actually, it can be a good news or the bad news. The good news is you can be at the stage whereby you are actually doing very well. You can actually sell it to someone who can actually run it better, so that you can take yourself off the load, or the business is actually not doing very well and you are looking into innovating. Okay? You probably need to change the way that you are doing. You probably need to, bring in new people to actually help in your business. Okay, think about, do you need to actually bring in new blood to give you a fresher perspective? Okay, do you need to actually work with a partner that you actually initially didn't think of, because sad to say so, probably that market is no longer working for you. How can you pivot? Okay, so it's about pivoting or selling it to benefit out of it, things like that. So it can be positive or negative. Yeah. So take a look. Is my long-term customer moving out of the profile of the target customer? Yeah. So let me share a key case in point that we actually had our client. So our client is actually serving the market that is more towards the younger generation, kids. Okay. So they have been serving them for quite a while, for years. But that if you are serving that kid market, it's actually a gaming industry. Okay, you're serving a gaming industry. Okay. So no matter what, people are outgrown, the gaming industry. Okay, so when you were younger, you were playing the game and you actually get your parents to pay for the game, to pay more. But when you are growing older, you may still play the game. Okay, that's a period where you probably can have a higher spending power, you pay more. Okay, but once you reach a stage whereby you have kids here and there, maybe you still play a game, you have higher spending power, but you probably do not have much time to actually play. And the kind of game that you play may actually change because you probably want to do it with your family. Okay, so that's a period of time that you may want to think about. Okay, now your long-term client who have been buying things from you, buying games or whatsoever from you, they may not be buying whatever game that you thought they are. So how can you actually, milk, I would say milk, but actually, sell more to that particular client and make sure that this client actually stay with you for a longer time. Yeah, so that's where you need to rethink any other products that you can actually serve the client, or should you actually pivot the whole business, going into something more futuristic, going into something more new to actually ensure that your database will still keep growing but not dropping. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, think about this few questions. Okay, any market that you are looking at. Okay, so like I mentioned earlier, Thailand is actually an entry point for CLMV. Okay, so let's say if you're in Thailand, you may want to look into any way that you can actually take advantage of your strong operation in Thailand and grow into those neighboring countries. Okay, so sometimes it's about opportunity. You may not want to wait until this stage and look into other market, but if you are at this stage, this is one of the options that you can look at to actually pivot or ensure that your current business is actually still valid and updated. Yeah. Okay, outdated. Yeah, whether your product is outdated. This one, usually in the point of view, if you are the entrepreneur running your business for very long, you may not actually see it that way, whether your product is outdated or not. So it's important that you get a third-party point of view, do some research. Probably you're running your business for 5 years, conduct a market research, through your channels, or you can hire someone to do that. You'll find out, is your product still valid? Okay. So sometimes, it's important to actually realize early that, the trend may be falling. Your product may be getting, less popularity, or actually competitors are coming in. The barrier of entry is actually lower. So you may want to start, setting out your barrier. Okay, if your product is actually outdated already, think of other ways to actually capture the market again or retain the market. Yeah. Last stage, processes. Which processes can I eliminate? Whether there's any way that you can actually optimize your operation. Okay. Yes. Why is that so? Is because sometimes depending on what kind of business, say if you are selling, just some example, if you're selling like property, property, there are limited spaces. Okay. So say you actually sold to 80% of the market share, and you know that there isn't any more land to actually build the company, build the development. Okay, so that's where you probably want to start eliminating your processes. Since the market is actually sort of like saturated, nothing else to sell to, cut down your processes. We know that maybe your team members are actually, you have huge team of members doing sales. Okay, and now you actually do not need salesperson. Start planning earlier. What can you do? How can you promote your internal team to actually take up other function? Whether you do need to let them go, or whether do you need to actually sort of train them earlier so that they can actually take up other function while you're at another stage of business. Okay. The case in point is usually for this case is businesses are already very mature, can be running for over decades. There's one business that we actually were dealing with in the past is they're actually running very well for many years. Okay, but a company bought over a contract. Okay, they are the manufacturer. A company bought over the contract, bought over the company that actually gave them the contract, and because of that, they were given like 3 years to actually think of new ways, and the contract will be gone. Okay, so imagine you are a manufacturer running the business for like 40 over years. Just majority of your revenue came from that particular stream. Okay, so what should you do with the whole factory? What should you do with the whole team of people? Yeah, so these are the few ways that you may want to think about. If that case happen, what should you do next? Yeah, so always keep yourself updated. What is the new market? Like for example, for that particular case, they can actually use the warehouse. They can use the factories, to do warehouse as a service. Okay, it's a new business model. Decades back ago, maybe this is not very receptive, but now this is the period of time where it's a service economy. People just use service, but they don't actually buy asset. Okay, so yeah, so this think early, but this plan will probably change. So over the years, 3 years, 2 years, we want to relook into it. Okay, so it's more applicable if you're at the later stage of your business. Yeah. Okay, so to sum it up, so this question, right, you can actually download the deck that Rebecca and my colleague Dylan actually shared in the chat group. So to answer that few questions. Okay, to sum it up, this is a few steps that we will usually do if you are actually going into a new market. Okay, step 1, find out what exactly in the HQ in your current, the one that you are very comfortable with, the whole market. What are you currently doing? What kind of offering do you have? Basically, the product. Okay, what are the current customer? Are basically people. Okay, what is the current USP positioning that you have? Okay, find out what exactly that you are doing it. Okay, so that's where you can actually nail down what is the kind of processes that you are actually have been doing very well. Your internal capabilities, your strengths, the assets that you have. Okay, and the resources that you can actually tap onto. Okay, so second step, look at the new market. Who do you want to actually serve in that new market? Okay, and how will your product being, the offering being, sort of needed to be customized to localize it, right? And external environment. External environment will be very important, especially in areas like political stability can actually affect the way that you do it. If your business is actually very reliant on grants, means your customer need to take the grants to actually buy your product, then take note of the political status. Okay, because as and when it change, your whole business may be gone because of that. Okay, external environment, stability, things like that. Competitors, yeah. So the new market USP, how would you position it in the new market? Okay, so that's where you are actually at the research stage. And finally, put these two information together. Okay. Yeah, so we can share a course. You can actually take a look. You can download the template. There's a template whereby you actually put step 1, step 2 together, and then you get into a conclusion for step 3. Okay. In the new market, what exactly should you offer to that new market? Okay, so always review that. You may finalize it at the planning stage, but when you actually launch in the new market, always review this. Okay, so this will actually allow you to run your business more efficient using the resources that you have in headquarters, so you don't need to duplicate in the new market. Okay, while also localizing it. Okay, so this is a common formula that we actually use when we actually help our client to capture new market. Okay, so take note that market may not refer only to country. Okay, it can be all along we are serving the women industry. Okay, I decided with the current product, I want to serve the male industry. So these are two different markets that we are talking about. Okay, so I've come to the end of the common market entry strategies and opportunity, but feel free to ask me any question. Happy to address them, regarding your business, or if you want to find out a little bit more about a situation here in Singapore or operating in that few neighboring Southeast Asia country, happy to share more. Yeah, I'll stop share. Okay. We have one. Okay. So I'll address the first question. What would you say is the main difference between entering into Southeast Asia versus entering into a Western country? Okay. Yeah, thanks, Dylan, for asking that. Okay, the first thing that I'll probably want to point out is entering into Southeast Asia. Depending on where you are, say you are actually in Southeast Asia, time zone make a very big difference. Okay. Yeah, why do I say so is because that will determine how your team is being run. Okay. We actually work with quite a number of companies coming from the Western side. When we actually have like calls, all this, right, we need to coordinate very well, especially for those that are 12 hours away in, like, for example, New York. Okay, so every time for this kind of situation, you need to maybe hold meeting either early in the morning or very late at night, 10 p.m., that kind of time. It's important to actually plan it out because you can actually burn out your team, okay, if you actually go into somewhere far without setting the pipeline up, okay, or getting a partner to help you to run over there. Okay, and also in Southeast Asia, there are a lot of, okay, second point is in Southeast Asia, we are actually pretty fragmented. Okay, so different countries have so many different culture. Just within Indonesia itself has so many islands and they speak different languages. Okay, so when you look into entering in Southeast Asia, you need to have a regional approach, regional play, but at the same time, you need to be very localized when you actually tackle each individual market. Okay, so like even simple things like logistic into like say Indonesia. Okay, it can actually take quite a while to have it into Indonesia because in the custom there are some maybe some red tape that you need to look into, or you need to declare it super well. Your language have to be good, things like that. So the difference of entering into Southeast Asia versus Western market is, yeah, you need to understand different country and they may not be in the same language. You need a strong local partner to do that. But whereas in the Western market, it's actually a different play. I would say it's easier to do in the Western market or in Southeast Asia, but in Southeast Asia, it's very localized and you may want to look into regional play. Okay, so I hope that answered the question. When is the right time for a business? When is the right time a business should give up trying to expand into the new market? Okay, so yes. So that goes back to at the very initial stage, have you set out your budget to do that? Okay, so plan it out. Okay, with your budget, it can give you a guideline of like how long should you keep trying the market with the milestone that you actually set along the way. Okay, so when is the right time that you should give up? I wouldn't say there's a right time to give out, but you can actually slowly, pull back. Okay, why slowly pull back is, say if you are running in the business that is more e-commerce, okay, you actually probably do not need to pull back completely. Maybe you can actually reduce your team over there running. If you have already set up a team to run there, particularly to serve the client over there, and you realize that that is not a market that is doing well, you can actually remove that local team itself and change strategy. Okay, I say you actually, by right, you are in Singapore, you are serving a Malaysian market. You set up a team over there, but you do not need, you just remove the people over there. But you still can serve the market in Singapore, whereby you can actually sell it online, send it over to Malaysia. But of course, it will change your business model and your approach of doing that business. Okay, so so that can be one of the area that you can look into. You may want to slowly pull back. And of course, when your budget has already been used up and you know that the benefits that actually gotten did not outweigh your costs within that period of time that you've given yourself, that's a period of time that you can actually slowly pull back and then explore the market next time. Yeah, but it's still pretty subjective, but this is my point of view for that. How do you think the market entry strategy have changed due to COVID? Okay, yeah, so a very good question, Dylan. How the market entry has changed? Over these 2 years, previously we actually do a lot of flying. Okay, almost every month we actually fly, in few office that we actually have. Next month we will resume flying too. But before that, the way of doing business is actually, the market entry way is like people will just fly over, meet that particular partners that potentially they can actually partner together. Every month fly over to set up the whole structure, things like that. But during pandemic, we realized that the approach of doing market entry is quite different. Yeah, it's no longer because you cannot fly, so a lot of things will be done virtually, and a lot of things will be done by trust. Okay, they get people that they trust to introduce a potential partner. Okay, that actually gives them more confidence in partnering that with the local partner that they may not have met before. Okay, so this is the common way that we see a lot of companies are doing it. Okay, and they willing to trust the people who actually bring them the partner, so that eventually they can start preparing for the market and then launch it officially when they are ready to, or when they needed to fly over. Okay, yeah, so that is the main thing. A lot of things change to online, and a lot of things is go by trust, and people introduce another person. Yeah, so yeah, Anthony or Dylan asked the same question for Anthony. Probably it was given to Dylan. Yeah, so any other question that you would like to feel free to ask, can actually address it. Okay, yeah. All right. Maybe Rebecca, could you help to share one of the course that we have, the how to market in Southeast Asia? That would be very useful. Currently, for that is actually priced $0, or even if you sign up, you can actually have a 1 month access to it. That was prepared by us. We actually have some statistics also study on individual country in Southeast Asia, selected ones. Okay, so it will be helpful for you when it comes to planning. What do you think are the reasons like business expansion fail despite following the textbook market entry strategy? To be honest, I feel textbook market entry strategy can only give you a guideline, but most of the time you actually can't, you can't just rely on that, because there are a lot of permutation, especially when it comes to human. Okay, human is the main one that actually changed the give you the uncertainty when it comes to business expansion. You see, you can trust a partner, but what if the partner just didn't do as well as what you expected? How can you move on from there? A lot of times, people will be screwed up by people, by human, rather than the approach that they actually do it. Yeah, so textbook is good to be a guideline, but most of the time, business expansion fail because of human. And also another thing is the risk assessment. Yeah. Why risk assessment is, you can take risks, but it's important to take calculated risks. You see, calculated risk will actually involve like, how much current network that you can tap into. Okay, so all this you need time to prepare. How much network that you can tap into? At least the estimation will be helpful. Talk to some people. Okay, so that will give you a calculated risk rather than just taking the risk without knowing the market well. So this kind of gap can be closed. Yeah. Okay, any other question? I hope that answers your question, Dylan. Yeah, so these are the series of the market entry series that based on consulting we created. So you can actually check it out if this is of interest. So whatever I cover here today is actually it's still pretty high level. If you need details, you can actually reach out over there. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Rebecca, anything that you need to do with? Which country is best to start NFT project? Oh, very good question. I think some of us over here, we actually buy a lot of NFT, NFT. And NFT is actually something that, because initially, before Blackstone Consulting, we were dealing with a lot of financial kind of product. So that was the time whereby ICO was very popular. Okay, so we were like in the previous company, the parent company that spun off Blackstone Consulting. So we actually structure a company for initial coin offering, and then subsequently STO, things like that. We do have clients, okay, in the NFT space right now. Okay, where is the best country? If you ask me, within Southeast Asia, Singapore currently is still a better one. Okay, why is that so? Is because we also have clients who is coming from in Hong Kong. Okay, but because Hong Kong, there will be a situation whereby security laws are kicking in, stuff like that. It's actually making it hard to actually have a company over there to deal with all the NFT or crypto related stuff. In Singapore currently, although they actually in the market, they actually ban Binance. If you are actually doing crypto trading, the Binance, the popular platform, was being banned to use in Singapore. Not the Binance Singapore, but the Binance International. So with that ban, I mean, it did create some fear in some of the market, but still, there are actually other platforms that you can actually purchase